Hello, this is a quick video on how to fill out the California Association of Realtors forms for buyer representation and broker compensation. And in order to do this, you would go to ZipForms. This is what we're doing today. And you would start by going to new, and you would start with a new purchase or offer. I know this is a buyer representation agreement, not a purchase or offer, but trust me, this is the best choice at this point. At the name, I would put in the buyer's name here because we don't really need a property address because we don't have one yet. We could check residential, and it's useful to make a template. And I'll show you what I mean by that once we get into the form. You could start it this way and save the template, but now we've created an empty transaction. If you go to parties, what you want to put in is, and my system does it automatically because, I've trained it some, who is the selling agent and broker? That would be you as the buyer's agent. And so you would put in your name, you put in your license number, you put in your email, your cell phone, you put in the name of the broker. Now, some of you might be at eXp Realty of Southern California, Northern California, California, Greater Los Angeles, whatever it is, you would put it in here, eXp Realty of California as an example. You would put in the broker phone number is not really necessary, but you could, I'm going to leave it out for now. It put in my phone number by default, which is okay. Street address, all of that is fine. Now we're going to click on save. All right, so now we have as a party my information and my broker's information. You would then want to add the buyer's information. So let's just say for, keeping it simple, this is the name of a buyer, and all we need to add is buyer1 at buyer.com. Let's say that's their email address. We don't need all of this other information. If you wanted to, you could put in a cell phone number. It doesn't really populate very many places. If you have two buyers, then you would put in the second buyer. We want everyone to sign it. So this is all fine. We're just going to close this now. So we have our buyers are in the system. We're in the system. Our name, our email address, our phone number, our DRE number, broker's name, broker's DRE number, broker's address, buyer is here. All right, we've got our templates set. Now, if you reach out to us, the transaction coordinator can help you set up the templates, but this wasn't that hard, right? And I have in my training material some examples of setting up templates. Let's go to documents. And what we're going to do is add a document, and we're going to add a form. And the form is the first one here, which is the buyer representation and broker compensation form. It's actually a bundle of forms. And then we're going to open it up. Now, and we're going to wait a moment. So the beginning of the form is agency disclosure. This is important. You want to check the boxes for buyer one, buyer two, if there's multiple buyers. Here we didn't put this in, but we want to make sure that the broker's number is there. Make sure that this is filled out. The name of the broker's DRE number, your name, your DRE number. This is just the back of the agency disclosure form. Date prepared is the day you're doing it. Says buyer one, says the name of the broker. Cool. When does it begin? Well, you might have to think about that. Is it beginning today? Am I meeting with them today? Am I meeting with them tomorrow? If I'm not sure, I could fill this out with them, but let's say I'm going to meet with them tomorrow. By the way, it doesn't hurt for you to print out some blank copies of some of the forms and take them with you, so you can fill them out by hand if you need to. But anyhow, you could put in the date. When would it end? I would typically do 30 days. It can be extended. It can't exceed 3 months. but how long you put it in is something you can negotiate with them. The default setting is non-exclusive. That means they can cancel. Exclusive means they can't cancel without giving 30 days notice. This is a harder sell, especially if you don't know them very well. Property type, you need to check appropriate boxes. Are they talking about single family, condos, manufactured homes? That's the default section. Is it multifamily, duplexes, triplex? Check the box. Is it apartments, 5 or more? Check the box. Commercial, check the box. If you don't check any boxes, it means it's single family, including condos, which includes townhomes, by the way. Location, you need to say which counties. Is it, and you can't just say California, but you could say Santa Clara County, you could say San Mateo County. You would need to talk to them about which counties they're actually interested in. They might say, I only want Milpitas. Well, then type in the city. Additional description, we typically don't have to do. Additional preferences, if they want to get into it, you could check the box and it launches a form called BIP, which is the buyer information, property preferences, and priorities. It's a form asking them a whole bunch of questions. Properties excluded from this representation. Where would this come from? Well, let's say they had a buyer representation agreement with another agent, and that other agent has showed them properties. And the agreement is if they buy those properties, they owe the other agent, not you. Ask them, have they ever signed another buyer representation agreement? And then put in those properties if they have such a list. How much is the compensation? Well, this is sort of up to you. You can lower it, but you can't raise it from here. So what you might want to do is to, and it depends upon the price point to me. For example, $20,000, I'll sell a house. Now that's 2% of $1 million, but it's obviously higher for a 700,000. But I'm not telling you how much to put in, but let's say it's 2.5%. Again, you could talk to the buyer. If that becomes an issue with the seller, it's possible for you to lower it, but you're not going to raise it. You also could simply say, I want, and you could put in a dollar amount. You could say $20,000 is what the compensation is. That's up to you, either a percentage or a dollar amount. If the broker receives compensation from the seller for buyer's representation, that's credited against the buyer's obligation. I would point that out to them. Most sellers are willing to give the buyer a concession to compensate their buyer's agent. The continued right to payment, I usually would put in 30 days. This says that if you show them a property and then for some reason your system expires, they cancel, if they buy that property in the next 30 days, they still owe you money. If it's a non-exclusive, they can cancel it upon receipt. If, however, you've showed them property, they can't go back and buy it for 30 days, and it's probably not going to be on the market, but they can't go back and buy it without paying you, right? This is just a way for them to get out if you're not getting along. If you picked exclusive, they have to give you 30 days notice. But again, that's more difficult to get people to sign. I'm just saying. Personal financial information. This is asking for the buyer to give you information that would show what they can afford and that sort of stuff. I typically would have the buyer talk to a loan agent before I do this. If the buyer says, I have no ability to pay you, I barely have enough for the down payment, this is a VA loan and I don't have any down payment, you would check the box. And if the buyer says, I have a VA loan and they won't let me pay you, that's actually been changed by the VA. But if for some reason their lender won't allow the buyer to pay you, you would check that box. Usually we're not checking those boxes. Compensation. This simply goes through the details of the form. Broker involvement means that you've showed them the property. They've entered the property and you showed it to them. The broker submitted to the seller an offer. The broker performed a market analysis. The broker introduced the buyer to the property, not just giving them a list, but acted on the buyer's behalf. Continuation of the right of compensation means that's that 30 days that says you'll get paid if they buy a property you showed them within 30 days. Timing, cancellation. I'm not going to go through this line by line, but this is all the other whereases and where tos. When you get to the end, confirmation of compensation. This is asking a second time for the buyer to confirm if you had put in 2.5% or 2% before. It shows up here. I put in $20,000. It shows up. If the buyer is an LLC, you would check that box and write in the name of the person that is signing for the LLC. Now we have buyer one. We have our information. You have the buyer's email address. Here are the other forms. Buyer investigation of advisory, just put in NA because at this point we don't have a property, right? This is just an advisory about they should investigate. Broker compensation advisory goes over the different ways you can be compensated. Possible representation of more than one buyer is just a standard form that says we might be working with other buyers. The Privacy Disclosure Act. We've come to the end of the form. Let's say you're happy at this point. What you would now do is go up to prepare signing in the top right corner. I usually would put in buyer's name. Again, I'm not really spelling it perfectly. Create it. It's got the buyer represent. It's going to launch. Add participants. We would add them from the transaction. That includes me and our fictitious buyer. Sounds good to me. I'm going to click on documents. It shows me these are the documents that we want. We go to tools. This should show the different signing fields, signers, add participants from transaction. I guess I forgot to check these two boxes. Then we select it. There we go. That's when you see those little colored boxes, that's what it shows. And if we go over here, you'll see it's starting to put in all of the signature blocks. Everything is there. Now we go to next, we hit send, and you sent it out for signatures. I know that was quick, wanted to go through it quickly so that you could see the details. Any questions, let me know. That's all I got.